Welcome and good day to all joining us for another program here at Love Bay Afro Beat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean diaspora online radio, the station that shares because we care. And this program today, um, we are excited to have on the Relationship and Marriage Hour back by popular demand to continue our talk on life after the death of a spouse. And it's good to have Mr. Martin, Vince Martin, here out of Nassau, Bahamas, back with us again this week. Dr. Maria McDonald, how are you? My co host, how are you today?
I'm doing good today. How are you?
Okay. Doing well, giving God praise. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, good. So, Mr. Martin,
All
why
right.
don't you reintroduce yourself to our listening audience, and then we will
Hmm.
get right into continuing our discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Martin.
All right. Thank you, my brother, Dr. Alvin Hebben, Dr. Marie McDonald. Once again, it's a pleasure to be on the show. What I appreciate with your show is it's a very comprehensive show. So it doesn't just speak to the spiritual, biblical, but it also, touches on the real worldview. And I admire that you've taken the time to touch on relationships, especially now we're talking about uh, death of a spouse, which, and I think in the last show I equated to divorce, because in divorce, you would have lost the spouse. Except, when your spouse dies, you don't normally see them picking up the kids from school or they don't move on with someone new.
Yeah.
So there's the trauma of divorce versus the trauma of death. And comparatively, you don't know which one is worse. But I think for those of us who have lost a spouse, we might think that I don't know if it's as bad as being divorced and having to deal with a broken marriage where you kind of see the spouse with somebody else and
Mhm,
it sort of relives the trauma and the failures of that prior relationship.
mhm.
So yeah, it was a quite practical insight. So I am not a professional like you guys. You both are doctors of various fields, right? I'm just a lawyer with some experience in working in the field, and of course, experience with death of a spouse. Having lost my wife about 3 years ago, and moving into a life of wholeness again. And I think in recapping, we talked about it, right? That marriage isn't 50-50. It's really 100%, 100%. Like when you put two eggs to make an omelet, you're not putting 50% of one egg, you're putting 100% of that one egg, and you're bringing 100% of the other egg. And I think one of the fallacies that have led to maybe destruction of relationships in our culture, particularly the Afro Caribbean culture, is the fact that people think marriage is 50-50. All right, that could be devastating because it's not. And when you think about making an omelet, just look like very simple, practical example. If you have one tainted egg, it taints the entire omelet. All right. So it's not 50% of the omelet that's tainted. You're not going to eat 50% of the omelet because the omelet, the eggs are intertwined with each other, right? The fabric is sort of, it sticks together in such a way that whatever contaminates one contaminates the other. And I think that's it's been lost in how people look at relationships. So 50-50 is all a myth. And I know I'm just recapping some of the things that we talked about last time when we were on the
Yeah.
show and
Yes.
how we look at marriage, because in order to deal with the death of the spouse, you kind of look at the foundation of a marriage. And that's why some people take it differently. And some people are all torn up and never rejoin the market because they're so devastated. But I think once we fix our worldview, and if we take it from a biblical standpoint, we fail because of lack of knowledge, right? The Bible
Yeah.
says we perish because of lack of knowledge. So I suppose the antidote to having a failed relationship is to get knowledge. Yeah. Um,
Yes.
I mean, it
Yes.
sounds
Yes.
simplistic, and I think, I mean, in our case, in my former marriage, it worked well. And as I said, it was good until it was over. Um, and I think for the most part, for those who are out there, particularly in this season, this is the Christmas season. My former spouse was very into Christmas, and so for me, it's usually a traumatic experience, and I have no problem admitting that. I mean, in another world, as a man, we would man up and big up our shoulders and don't say things like that. But in reality, we could say that it could be a depressing time, and even as believers, we look at depression as some demonic experience, but it's a real life. Man was created as an emotional being, right? So we
Yes.
have various degrees of emotions. We're upset, we're angry, we're sad, we're happy. And it's not demonic and I think people demonize emotions. Now, of course, you can let your emotions. Jesus was angry, right? When we talk about his anger against the money changers and the religious oligarchs. So it's just not to demonize emotions, especially for males, because men tend to hide a lot of things. Real men, like today I defied the audience by just wearing pink because they're like, men don't wear pink, and I'm like, I'm gonna break whatever stereotype because
Exist.
a part of being a whole male and a whole heterosexual male is to embrace who you are and to be honest with yourself. And I think that's what you take into relationships, going back to what I said earlier about the 50-50 effect versus the omelet being, the egg is 100% one egg and 100% the other egg. And so you have to be whole. And I think we talked about it, Dr. McDonald, when we said about, I think you had asked the question about getting married again, and I'm like, well, why not? If you had a good relationship or a good marriage, it's something that you do because some people are afraid that, well, what if my next spouse dies? Well, you could die too, right? In fact, every marriage will end either in death or divorce. If you look at it, I mean, every marriage will end. Every marriage in the world will end. All right.
Wow.
I mean, unless there's a rapture. No matter how much you love your wife, talk there, but I know you love her dearly, and she's the
Very
the,
much.
the liver. But the reality is, I hate to bring it on so close to Christmas, but that will end because it's still death do you part.
Yes.
Unless you're caught up, if you're post-tribulationist or whatever you believe in terms of eschatology and the rapture, unless that happens and you both go up, then someone will be gone and others will be left. So I think as we look at relationships, and I was going back to saying, as we look at this particular season, which it's a very depressing season for many people. They don't talk about it. And I realize as a counselor, well, as a legal counselor, and talking to people who come for, well, I'm not a psychologist or trained in any therapeutic field, but in the law, people talk about it. And when you look at when, divorce and separations, around this time, you find there's a prevalence because people realize that the relationship isn't working out, or the person isn't fully committed to them, or there's some other person that may be in the picture. So, for whatever reasons, this season has one of the highest rates of suicides if you really look at the statistics. So the holiday season, when people are promoting, couples out buying gifts at, the popular shops, whether in the United States or the Bahamas or wherever you are. And it just gets overwhelming for a lot of people to try and live this perfect life, which nobody really lives, right? So I think when you talk about, and this all ties in with death and divorce, right? Because when you realize that you're honest with yourself and you've lost a spouse and you grieve and you go on grieving. And I think the last time we had the show, I talked about how my grieving was so sorely delayed, right? It was more because there's no prescription book. And some people were saying, okay, now that you've grieved rather for like 6 months, cut it off and move on. And I'm like, well, each individual, and that's what makes us human, right? We have different speeds, different temperaments, And we grieve at different levels. We're not like an AI tool that can pre-program, grieve for 10 seconds, move on. And I think I was saying, I think Dr. McDonald, we brought this up where I said, until you're ready to be whole again, because a lot of broken people go looking for whole people and they make a broken relationship. So it goes back to my theory of the egg, right? So you
Right.
have
Yeah.
a rotten egg, a rotten egg and a good egg. So when you put that together in an omelet, Dr. Hebben, wouldn't it still be a bad omelet?
Yes, it would.
Right? Even if you multiply the good eggs by 20, so you have 20 good eggs and one rotten egg, you're going to still have a tainted omelet or a tainted scrambled egg. I mean, I like egg. That's why I'm using the analogy. But I think it's also very simple for people to understand. So the point is to have a good omelet or a good marriage or a good relationship, you bring two good eggs. So whether you've been divorced, whether you've lost a spouse, you recover and you come back whole and willing to make it work. But it has to be that both parties come back not 50-50, but 100% each. And I think that's the difference in getting married again, whether you've been divorced or whether your spouse have died. It's making sure that you're whole again to rekindle a relationship. Otherwise, you may have the same results. Well, apart from the spouse and stuff, you could have the same results because you could kill your spouse. That's a joke. Because and that's why Moses instituted the decree of divorce, right? Because the people were killing each other. That's what he said. Unless the nation of Israel wouldn't have survived if that decree wasn't given out. So because there's a lot of argument whether in the Christian church it should be allowed, but when you look at why Moses instituted it, it's like, this woman would kill her husband or the man would kill his wife. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it will still end in death, right? Till death do us part.
Yes.
So I think that's the importance, and I'll stop there because I'm sure I've said a lot without even coming up for air or letting you guys get a word in. But I just wanted to sort of get a broad recap of what we did in the last show. So if there are a new audience listening, they could kind of get an idea of what the topics, which was pretty vast and deep, which I'll let you, Dr. McDonald and Dr. Hebben, get more into. So with that,
I have a question.
I'll put the brakes.
Yes, I have a question for you, Mr. Martin, so that our listening audience can get some tools or some pointers that they can hang their hats on, or a starting point. And I want to go back to your egg analogy. And when I see it, two persons coming together is like the two eggs. Then you break them, and as they go through life beats them. So now these eggs are being whipped, if if
Mhm.
if you want to say so, to the point now that you can't tell which egg is what, because
Right.
now they're now one.
The two eggs become one.
The two
To
eggs
become one
become.
flesh. Yeah.
Yes, that's a very good analogy. Now, this is the difficult part, is one of those eggs or one of those persons now dies.
Mhm.
So there's a separation. How does that next egg, and what did you do? Because you made a very good point that we talked about last week. Before you go into another relationship, you must be whole, because we believe that relationship is 100-100,
Mhm.
not 50-50. That's
Right.
foolishness. A
Right.
100-100. Now
Exactly.
that that person is gone, that you have been whipped, and you all two now have become one. That person has now been torn away from you.
Mhm.
What are some of the steps? What are some of the things that you do to regain your wholeness?
Mhm.
What did Mr. Martin do to regain his wholeness before now he can say, I can now go back to?
Yeah.
the dating
Great.
game to do
Hmm.
this again.
Yeah, and it's a game because it's a rough game out there. I've been I've been told the streets are rough. So if you're married, just enjoy your marriage, go through your hard times, but I don't think you want to come back. If
Oh
unless
no,
you have to come back on these streets, um,
sure.
and you know what?
That's
I've developed.
another talk show.
So Dr. McDonald, Dr. Eben, you might have some rough times with your spouse, right? But you know what? Trust me. Taking on someone new with their history, because as we go back to this egg, and you know what I've learned, Dr. Happen, to your question is humor. And I think my former spouse, she's a very humorous person. I
Mhm,
have think I've pulled a bit of that. You know her very well, so I pulled a bit of that from her because I
mhm.
realized being serious, you'd really want to hurt somebody.
Yes, yes, yes.
um, so how do you recover? How do you deal with that? Because the spouse is dead, and
Mhm.
from a legal perspective, first of all, you kind of look at the fact that well, uh it's you. So the legal contract is broken, right? Till death do us part. So I think what was a question that Dr. McDonald or Dr. You would ask last time. How do you feel guilty about moving on? No, because well, you could. That's emotional, but it's legally speaking, biblically speaking, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of God, if your spouse dies, then you're free from the contract. You're free from the covenant that you had before God and man. So it's over. So
You fulfill the
legally,
contract. Yeah.
you fulfill, right, that contract. You have no more obligation to that contract. You may have an emotional stake in it. You may feel a little guilty because you're going out, but at least for the guys who feel that way, because obviously some people, male or female, would be going out before the spouse dies with other people, right? So it only depends on whether you really love your spouse and that person was your heartbeat. Because to that question, when you asked, I had one or two colleagues who they were happy when their spouse went, and
Oh
because they're
wow.
like, yeah, because they told me, and lawyers get to hear a lot of things, a lot of secrets, like priests, right? And they came to me, right, and they said, they want a divorce, la 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 la. And they said, well, divorce is too expensive. I think she is sick, so I'll just wait until she crops out. And while you might think that is cold and crass, I mean, we hear that quite a bit. I mean, my colleagues in divorce law could tell you they hear all kind of excuses from people
Wow.
and their spouses, about their spouses. I mean, we as lawyers, there's this confidentiality, between myself and the client, so you don't, go in the court and tell the judge, yeah, we were just waiting until she crops out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to the question at hand is, you rebuild by, as I think I said earlier, and maybe the egg omelet analogy wouldn't be most fitting in that instance, because now when you take that omelet that was made with two persons, and the one of them would have passed away, what you're dealing with now is a whole new kind of relationship with yourself. Because for the most part, I think we'd have said on the last show, you're used to this person now being in your space. You're used to this person being in your bed. And we've had some nice and cold nights over the last couple of days, right? So you're used to that cuddling and all of that stuff. And then, that spouse is no longer there. So you kind of adjust, and almost become more reliant on yourself again for. And by the way, you're never supposed to be relying on your spouse for happiness. I mean, that you need to come with your own brand of happiness to a relationship. Because if you come in thinking that person is coming to make you happy, you're going to be in for a nice little surprise. So with that
Mhm.
said, your your healing process starts with your psychologists and psychotherapists will tell you, which I've done when my wife had passed away. As like, I spent 6 to 7 months of just grief counseling, talking to the experts, well, also you talk to your pastors, but they're also, emotional and psychological experts you talk to kind of getting your bearings back as a whole person, and really going through life knowing that that person isn't coming back. All right. So so that's one. It's really getting that help, that professional help, I would say. And in getting that professional help is making yourself better as well, right? So I got a little crazy and threw myself into other things like you know, prestigious doctors. I started to pursue a doctorate degree. I started to take on more responsibilities at work. I started
Mhm.
to work with more charitable organizations, which I realized was not the best decision because I got burnt out. But I figured being burnt out was better than feeling the pain of the vacancy or the loss, right? So I would work myself so tired that I don't feel anything else. You understand?
Mhm.
So you could be so busy that you are eliminating the the deficit for why you're, you know, of the loss. So you don't feel it doesn't hit you as much because you're not paying attention to it because you're busy doing so many other things. And it's not until you stop. And I told you that's why I had it delayed. And for anyone listening in your audience who would probably be doing the same thing, and I'm thinking men are most likely to do it than women, is you have a delayed grieving process simply because you absorb yourself in so many other things, so many other organizations, charities, whatever, to kind of meet that loss, to you know, to substitute for the loss, for the conversations you would have at night, for the, you know, the bad time talks, the little lovely texts and stuff that you would have if you do it with your spouse. So yeah, so realize that that's not happening anymore. That, you know, that person is gone. They're not coming back. um, and then you have to. So it's all back to what I talked about, self healing. And when I say self healing, it's not necessarily self. Well, self healing means you're taking care of yourself now. It's your me time. It's your there's this term about self help and self help and your mental, you know, looking at your mental and emotional state and making sure you protect that. So I think my experience was a bit delayed, but when I really understood it, and it's being grounded in faith, right? It's being grounded in the word and realizing that this is and I stopped blaming God some time ago because obviously as a believer you would say, well, God, you could have stopped this, you could have healed this person. You know, you've healed other people. I've seen other people cured from cancer, believe it or not. I've seen miraculous healing without going through the medical system, as well as people who were healed through, you know, doctors and surgeons. So you know, that was an also another process of grieving because you're not just grieving the relationship with the dead spouse, you're grieving relationship with your living God. And because it's a strained relationship now because you're saying you're you know, your spouse is gone. You know, I think this was a biblical verse, and I know you guys are more the experts of the Bible than I am, but I think there was a verse where there was a prophet saying to Joshua, Moses is dead. You can't look to him for advice no more. He's dead. You know,
Yeah.
what you gonna do? What you gonna so and I think that's the thing, your spouse is dead now. So you can't look to them for the comfort, the advice, or whatever you used to get from them. Is what you're gonna do. And so now I looked up to God and said, "Lo, but what's going on? Why? You know, why did you do this? Why did you do this to me? Like, you know, I thought I'm like your favorite child. I'm a good guy, right? Or she's a good girl, right? So you know, why did it have to happen? And I think that is also as impactful as the loss of the spouse, because if you have a relationship, and this is only for those who have that relationship with God, to have that fight with God in a sense. And when I say fight, I realize it's not a fight because a fight is only when two people have equivalent strengths, and you know, I have no match for an infinite Almighty God. But I think for a long period of time, and I hope it helps somebody who's listening. There was this there was I was upset. I was really upset with God because um, He's God and He could do anything, you know.
Yes.
So I think when I got to deal with that particular emotion is when I started to heal. It was not just the death of the spouse, it was the fact that, hey, God could have healed this person and prevented them from dying. So why didn't he?
Mhm.
And I had to come to grips that I may never get an answer to that. And am I going to be upset forever? I mean, is it going to stop me from getting to heaven? It's so you had to come to grips with, okay, I realize I'm human, I'm frail. There's some things I may never get an answer to, and I have to be okay with that. I have to be able to back off and live life. Yeah.
You've said a whole lot. You said a
Yeah.
whole lot,
No.
and I think it's needed because someone could maybe listen and going through the same thing. So you're not helping them. But what I would like for you to elaborate a bit more on is when you would have realized you were not being healed, you were burning yourself out because you were just trying to be busy. Before you began to accept that the Lord's could have done, in there, when you realized that you were burning yourself out, what did you do that brought you to yourself to realize that now you have to do something? And
Hmm.
the second thing you did was you released everything to the Lord. You allow it to, you release
Mm.
that part of it, from what I've heard. So what did you do?
Okay,
Um,
so very good question, Dr. McDonald. So first thing, there's a saying that you don't really look up until you get knocked down on your back, flat on your back, right? So
mhm,
I think there was a period where I got, flat. I got knocked flat. I mean, because you're looking horizontally while you're standing up vertically, right? But until you get knocked flat, then you're looking vertically because you don't have a choice but to look up or down, and you fall down. I don't think you want to look down, right? And I think it came to a point where I was doing so many different things and involved in so many different organizations, and I didn't have I wouldn't say a nervous breakdown, but it became overwhelming. People calling you, I like I told you, I was doing a doctoral process. My professor's like, "Oh, Mr. Martin, you're late with your thesis assignment." Oh, and then work like, didn't you take on this extra project to lead this unit? And how come you won't send this report yet? So you realize that your backlog and everything, and then you want like 48 hours in a day, and the Lord wouldn't give you more than 24 because everybody else has to work for 24. Why would you need 48? And I think I came to that point where I knew I was burnt out. I knew I was, and that's where I probably quit. And I went into my office. I talked to my supervisor at the time, and I guess nobody really took me seriously. That I'm like, I think I'm going to quit because it was a great job. It's a wonderful job, wonderful benefits. All right, big organization, good reputation. And I'm like, you know what? This is the day I'm just going to quit. And like I didn't have like a plan, a backup plan. I was just like, I just getting out of here because I just tired of dealing with crap. And it was like it wasn't any specific thing. It's like everything just culminated in, all right, that's it. And then the organizations that I volunteer for, I sent a note to the leader of those or the board. Um, like one particular organizations that refused to accept my resignation, I quit like twice, and I stopped doing the work. And they had board meetings, and I just blocked the calls. I, I took a radical stance, and I these were some friends who I sat on boards with, right? And they're like, "You blocked my call." I said, "Yeah." And I mean, I was quite honest with it. Like, I can't take
yeah,
on nothing else. I'm at the stage where I realized in my humanity, and my human frailty that I can't do anymore. And then I so I did nothing, and then I realized, okay, you're trying to fill a void, but you're not going about it the way the proper way, or the God way, you know.
yeah,
So get professional help. I think one of the answers to the question that you asked, you get professional help. So I called the therapist, to deal with the grief and to deal with the void. Now that is your second question. God. So yeah, I realized through the therapist, and through my good friends, like Dr. Eben. those they tell you the reality, and it's always good for people who tell you the truth. They tell you when you smell bad.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know yeah. And they're like, but you look bad, you smell bad, you ain't shave,
Yeah.
you need a haircut.
Or
you
brush your
know
teeth.
yeah, well, I used to do that. Yeah, but I get you. And you know what, I think, and because there's a point when you're dealing with grief that you don't care what people think. You don't care that you're going to get back in the market, so you don't care if you look a little shabby. There's a point where you just don't care um about anything. And then I realized a person said to me, "Man, you've been a great inspiration to me. I've watched you all of my life. I love the fact that as a young man, and this is what a young guy came up to me and said, he never knows watching you. And he's like, you've been a wonderful, you inspired me to get married. You inspired me to do things. You didn't join. You didn't sell your soul to the devil with all this stuff." He's telling me all of the stuff that I didn't realize he knew about me, right? Because he saw me looking a little down in the press, and all of his life, he's never seen me looking down in the press. And most of my life, I've tried never to be down in the press. But I think I went out in public because I had to go to a food store, and he saw me in the food store, and he just saw me just looking a little shabby. This is like, this ain't you. You're out of character. And I think that shook me up because it realized that, oh, people are actually watching you. People don't tell you this until, I guess, the
They
worst
see.
possible point, but they're
Yeah.
they're watching you. So all of the life that you're doing good, or you are walking on the fine rope. They're watching you. It's actually when you fall off the rope, then they say, "Buddy, you need to get back up." I mean, we've been watching you. You inspired us. You inspired us about marriage. You inspired us about taking care of a sick spouse when you were getting nothing back from that deal. When you were dealing with a spouse who was paralyzed or who had a very terminal disease, and all you were doing is giving and giving and giving and not getting anything in return. So once he told me that, I felt so good, right? It's like, oh, somebody actually recognized that I actually was doing something right. I
That's
was
right.
actually following my vows and the commands of God. And so when I realized that, oh, people are actually watching you, and they have an expectation, and then I think for me, I didn't want to let them down
Yes.
in a sense, because all of this thing of you've been preaching and doing over the years, you don't let it just fail because
Mm-hmm.
of your emotions or how you feel a particular day. Because tomorrow, I'm guaranteeing you can't rely on, you can't trust your emotions. Today I feel like nothing. Tomorrow
Yes.
I don't.
That's
So
right.
that,
You know.
Dr. McDonald, is what helped
Mhm.
significantly. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Hope I
That's
hope I've answered your question.
certainly you did, and that's powerful because you would find that some people like you talk about persons who are happy when if their wife or their parent spouse died. Um, thing is that healing has to take place. Healing has to take place. Um, had you jumped into another relationship, it would have been terrible.
Yeah, especially for that new person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially yeah. So
yeah,
it's good when we can just take time out and do a check of ourselves, see where we are,
yeah,
because
yeah.
already you are in a chaotic state. So
Yes.
you have to come to grip with who you are, what you want to see now going forward. You know, and I personally believe that that is one of the reasons we have a lot of problems in relationships
Mhm.
when people jump out of a situation,
Yes.
out of a relationship into another one. You know,
Hmm. Uh-huh.
so that's
I will
powerful.
tell you, I mean, I will interject in that, Dr. McDonald, that I remember having a friend that I counseled when he was going through a divorce. He got divorced, like, say, March 2024. Then in June 2024, he was sending me an invitation to his wedding. And I had to call him, and I'm like, uh, really, what's going on here? And this is the conversations we don't have with our friends, right? Hey, don't you think it's kind
Yeah,
of soon? You just, I mean, have you healed from the breakup? I mean, without knowing the details of, but if if a marriage ends, just know that that's a pain. Like I say, that's a traumatic event. There are laws of trauma in divorce, right? Whether
That's
the
right.
spouse, for you to get a decree nisi made by the courts, there has to be something very significant that was done. Because in our system, without going into the technicality of what divorce is, there has to be a fault. All right, we don't have a no fault system of divorce in the Bahamas. So which means for you to get a divorce, somebody had to do something wrong, right? Whether that's adultery, abuse, cruelty,
Right, right.
desertion, or separation, something had to have gone wrong. So if you are now moving on to a new relationship and a new marriage, like 2, 3, 4, 5 months later, as soon as you got your divorce finalized, I'm like, I would caution the person you marrying to kind of like just
Yes,
just be a little
yes.
careful,
Yeah.
because what happens
Oh,
is
yeah.
you're bringing a broken egg into a relation. I mean, nah. This is not to say that somebody can't heal in 2 or 3 months. You look here, it ain't me. I can't heal in 2 or 3 months. Physically, I can, but I don't know if I can emotionally. That's just being honest with
No,
myself. So
no.
no, so
Yeah.
you can't see me breaking up
Thanks.
a relationship, even if it was not a marriage, and then 2 or 3 months moving into a serious commitment like a marriage. So I had to call my friend and say, "You sure what you know what you're doing? You sure you?" But you know what he told me? He's like, "Well, I just lonely." I said, "So what happens if she gets stuck at work and you lonely? You're gonna get a divorce because she can't take care of your needs." So you even have to be and this is going back to marriage. You even have to be very intentional about why you want to get married, whether it's the
Exactly.
first time or the second time. Because if you're
Exactly.
just getting married because you think this person is going to make you happy, you're in for a surprise. You're going to get married because you need somebody to rub your leg at night. I mean, what happens when they don't rub your leg at night? What you going to do
Exactly.
then? Get a divorce?
Because their expectation is somewhere else, and that's
Yes,
the
Yes,
problem.
yes.
Problem comes in
yes,
right there. Yes.
yes. And
Um.
that's the big word you said, Dr. McDonald, expectation. I think, and so this is a lot, and then I'll
Mhm.
shut up and let you ask question. But when I went into a marriage when Pastor Miles Monroe was alive, and he was, pastor, and he said, "Wentz, do not have any expectation of your spouse." And I'm like, "So why are you
Ah, I like that.
getting no?" But he laid it out, because when you have expectations, disappointments barge in, because when
Hmm.
an expectation
Yeah.
isn't met, you it's now a disappointing event, and you start collecting histories and events of disappointment, which put a strain on the marriage. And sometimes your spouse may not know that they didn't meet it. So if I
Mhm.
expect, for example, in a marriage relationship, that my spouse gives me sexual pleasure every night, and I didn't tell her that, but that's an expectation from whatever, then what happens is I started to now retaliate when I don't get what because she's in meeting her part of the bargain. So I stopped meeting my part of the bargain. I stopped doing whatever, like cleaning the
Yeah.
dishes, putting the toilet seat down,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
becomes a quiet war, which nobody
Yeah.
wins in a marriage. Nobody.
Wow. That you said a mouthful right there. Do not have
Yes.
expectations of your spouse. I think our audience need to hear that, because that is where a lot of relationships are broken. And like you say, the quiet war. We're falling
Mhm.
apart, and there is no word being spoken, but we are falling apart.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
because of the expectations.
Mhm.
Oh,
It is. And I'll say this, yeah, I promise to shut up. But it is because, listen, and I think, and during a counseling session, it's important for people who are getting married to go through this counseling session, where you talk about these expectations, okay, and gender roles, because you are expect that, because if you married a professional woman who is who's a professional, she's just like you, she's a doctor of something, a professor, or a career woman working in industry, and you expect her to come home at 5 o'clock and cook dinner every night, then you're in for a big unfortunate surprise. So you have to actually lay out the gender roles. So if we get married, it's simple. In traditional days, men would have been the breadwinners. They bring home the bacon. And these days, women make more money and have higher jobs than men. I mean, you look at the statistics, and they will prove it. In most professions, most look at medicine, law, well, accountancy, teaching, well, maybe not engineering, but females dominate the traditional professions, probably with the exception of,
Yes.
I can't think of a profession that a woman isn't like more than 50% of the population. I'm sure in the law profession, they have taken over in
A
terms
great
of
deal.
numbers. So just
Yes.
like teaching, nursing used to be a male oriented. Now it's female dominated. So gender roles, because now with women working, how do you reconcile that with the home life? Who's taking care of the children if you have children? I mean,
Hmm.
whose responsibility is to pick up? Is it so? I think this is where expectations come in because as men, based on how we are trained, if we're trained at all,
Right.
because there's no marriage book training, right? We expect the woman to do A, B, and C, and I guess we chill and watch football. and, and unless you have a communication, boy, it's gonna
Hmm.
be a chilly football game when you realize you're watching football outside by yourself and you can't, and the door is locked when you try to get in the house. That's
Oh,
because there were
yes.
expectations. So I would say,
Yes.
and I think this would lend
Yes.
to me having a kind of a fruitful relationship, is we didn't have any expectations of each other, and that doesn't mean that we didn't go as far as possible to make sure that each other's needs were met. So
Amen. That's
that's the
good.
other part of that
That's
story.
very good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very good
Okay,
advice. Very
I'm
good advice.
now I'm shutting up and letting you answer questions and ask questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Doc, I just say because we have a lot of women that are career women, professional women, and
Hmm.
then you have a family, but that family has to be maintained. So the
Hmm.
best thing
Yeah.
is not to have that expectation. I know it was a challenge for me being a professional woman initially
Hmm.
when I began to move into that area. Then my husband was like, you have to do this. And then, we had a little push here and there, because he felt, but you should be with the kids, you should do.
Hmm.
But I tried to put in all my time with the children while they were younger. And as they got older, then I was a bit more free. So at this point, it's only him that I'm obligated to, right? The kids are,
Hmm.
they're grown.
Right.
So we have that understanding now. He supports me, right?
Hmm.
But if there's a greater expectation, because he was able to adapt, and we
Yeah.
we
Yes.
we talk, he adapted, we talk, But what about some other men who are not willing to budge?
Yes.
That's when you have
Yes.
serious problems.
Right. Right. And actually, Dr. McDonald, I think you underscore a principle that most people miss. And when you talk about your spouse and you talk about the children, the expectation, and the fact that you're a professional woman, and I think when people get married, they don't take all this because I like when I was getting married, I wasn't really looking for a career oriented woman. I was looking for some like a homemaker because I would make the money. I mean, I worked in a profession where you can make a decent living, right? So
Right.
I don't need to buy a 10-story house and have a helicopter and two luxury cars. So I don't need to make $2 million a year. So but the whole point I'm saying is you kind of know what your value is, and my value was less than being flashy and sporty, and in terms of accumulating a lot of things and having a woman. So in other words, I didn't need a dual income house where we made $500,000 or $1 million a year to buy things that we'll never use to impress people who don't like us, right? which most people do.
Yes,
you know
definitely. Yes.
so we had a very, and we were on the same page. And I think what you also point out is the importance of communication in a relationship, because it is amazing how many people do not communicate until they get to the lawyer's office, and they say we need to get out. And I'm like, did you guys talk about this? Did
Yeah.
you talk about having children? Because it's amazing. People come and they want to get divorced because the wife don't want to have children. And I'm like, well, when dating for 5 years, nobody kind of had this topic in their mind that she don't want to. She's a size 6 and she don't want to get any bigger, so she having no children. And I'm
Wow.
like, okay. And that was a decision she made, and the guy was upset. And I'm thinking there's a serious lack of communication
Lack of communication.
in the dating relationships because I have all those discussions. I
Yes.
mean, it's
Exactly.
like, I
Exactly.
mean, and if we agree that we're not having children, then that's fine. But there has to be a discussion. If we agree that you're going to cook on Mondays, I know my Dr. Eben is an excellent chef of great repute. So he might prefer to cook as opposed to his wife. I mean, but so it doesn't mean that in the gender roles that the woman automatically cooks or the guy automatically takes care of the children. Because I mean, you can agree to the gender switch. I'm just saying
That's
you
right.
have to have the discussion. There has to be a communication.
That's right.
Otherwise, and I think that when it comes to spouse and it turns back into the relationship and marriage, it is one of the foundations of why like when I had a good relationship with my former spouse because we've covered all those grounds because we talked about how to discipline, you know, a daughter,
Yes.
how to deal with situations when they arise, difficult situations, how to
That's
deal with simply as family dinner, which where we're going to travel or whether we're going to go to the in-laws for Christmas. I mean, that discussion happened every year. And I
oh,
always like, let's travel. And she's like, no, you're not going to avoid my in-laws this year. Your in-laws this year. You're
wow.
always trying to avoid your in-laws. And I just smile. So,
Uh,
but that was the discussion. We had
that's
those discussions. We discussed everything. And so for anyone who's going into a relationship, whether you've been
right.
divorced or you're dealing with the loss of a spouse, I think yeah, in your new relationship, you talk. I mean, goodness gracious, when the body fades away and all of that beauty and stuff, the only thing you two could be doing at age 90 is talking.
That's right. That's right. And so funny you said that because I was listening to a clip on this week, and the wife wanted to know a man respect his wife. And guess what? He said respect. He said when the beauty fades, when everything else began to go down, it's only respect. And that was what he gave. Dr. Everett looked like our guest got knocked out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but that was just so interesting, though. Yeah,
Yeah, very. Hmm.
yeah. But what do you do?
Yeah.
You have to
So
continue
it
going.
right. It has to be that respect, though. It has to be that respect that maintain and keep that relation and communication that keeps the relationship going.
And those are
Oh,
key points. Those are key factors that are needed for the success of the relationship.
yes, indeed. This,
Yeah.
I mean, listening to our guests, it's really powerful, and it's
Yes.
something that need persons would love to hear, especially those that are going through um, loss of a spouse.
And Doc,
Seeing
what?
how someone else made this.
Yes.
Hmm.
And that is what
Hmm.
I wanted, especially for this season as well. Because you and I know that it is during these holidays, these special seasons, that suicide rates go up,
Oh
that
yes, oh
depression
yeah,
increases. So I wanted us to have this discussion so people can know there is hope. There
there is
there
hope.
there is life on the other side of the death of a loved one, the the
Yes,
uh, the death of a spouse, because while you and your spouse, while both of you are still alive, you attend to make them the
yes,
life, the reason for my existence.
hmm,
If you ask me, um, Alvin, if you see yourself living another 90 years, 100 years, what is it that you don't want to change? And I would say to you, the first thing is I would want Tanya to still be here too.
yes,
So me, I am planning my tomorrows with her,
that's right.
but
That's
that's
right.
not a guarantee.
Hmm. It doesn't
What
guarantee.
happens when when your plan for that loved one will not be realized because of the death.
Wow.
What do you do
Yeah.
then?
Yes.
Uh, and
Well,
Mr. Martin is an
All right.
example in
okay.
Hello.
that.
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear
we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Um,
Okay. I don't. All right. Sorry. Let me fix that, and then I'll let you finish.
you.
okay,
That was just
that Mr. Martin is an example of you can live on the other side.
You can. You
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
You can pick up the pieces and move forward. Even
yes,
though it may not be easy, you can make it. And what I get to is that your first priority then is to take care of yourself.
yes.
Deal
Self,
with the grief counseling. Whatever it takes, self-care a must. You know, if you're going to make
yes,
another person happy eventually, you have to deal with you.
yes, yes.
So
And
I love it. Yeah.
and and Doc, that is so true. And even when we get into planes, one of the first thing that they say to you, in case of emergency, make
Hmm.
sure that you put your airbag on first. Make sure that you are safe first.
That's
Then
right.
you can assist others.
If you're
Um,
traveling with others, then you deal
yeah,
with them. But
yeah,
you're
and
so
that's when life throws you those curveballs too, that you
curveballs.
make
Yeah,
sure that you are okay, and
yeah.
then you go on and you could make it, helping others.
So one of the things who I get is you do not just lay down and play dead.
Yes,
I love what Mr. Martin did. He got busy, even though he burned himself out. I think he took on a bit too much, but
yes,
he got busy. He kept life moving. There are some persons who just sit there and they, pine over the person, or they, grieve over the person without getting help. That's not the solution.
no,
Life has to go on, especially when there are children or in the midst. Older, um, you know, kids will be affected by whatever you
yeah,
do.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, we have to be intentional that we want to move
hmm,
forward. We want to get the help that we need. And if we plan to remarry, we want to know that when we remarry, we are our best self. We're not
yes,
given a
and that's
part
so important.
like he
Yes,
gave, right, like he gave the example with the egg. We're not coming in this thing broken, torn, disgusted, busted, all of that. No, we come in whole. We come in
yeah,
whole.
right.
So
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting to wholeness is not easy,
No.
but it's possible.
it's possible. Yes.
Very. Can you guys hear me?
Sure,
Yes,
we
we
can.
can.
What I and there's this penchant to shut up, but I really want to say, since this is my last few minutes on your show, is wholeness is a deliberative effort, right? So it don't happen by happenstance. And when I talk about wholeness, I remember, if those of you who've read, like, Miles Monroe had a book called Single, and he talked about it being, part of being single was, it's about being unique and whole in yourself, being satisfied
Right.
with yourself. So, as a lawyer, I think I realized when people talked about divorce before, when they came to me, they, first of all, they didn't really know themselves when they got married. I mean, they were expecting the other person to complete them. And once, going back to the same example, we talk about the omelet being 50%. So if you're broken, or if you don't know yourself, and then the fellow you're going to marry, he's just trying to find himself too, right? Ain't
Come-
sure if he straight or in between, or But anyway, that's the end topic. But the point is, he ain't sure and you ain't sure, right? And you both get into this long-term commitment, about which is marriage, but has all kind of legal implications.
mhm.
Both not being sure, and then you don't think there would be problems. Well, obviously there would be problems,
Yep.
because as soon as a little earthquake happens, a little hurricane comes,
Mhm.
you're gonna either fold up, or your roof is gonna fly off, which means your relationship is gonna crash. And so being whole, being single, means that you actually have to know who you are before you try to join somebody else. You need to
Yeah.
know where you're going, what's your values. It's all right. Let's one last simplistic example. When I'm going in my car and I'm driving, like vacation, I say to I used to say to my former spouse, okay, let's go, and she's like, well, and I'm like, just trust me, just go wherever I think I want to go. She's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 buddy. um, Tell me where you plan to go. And
Yeah.
I think that is indicative of our relationships today, because when people get married, they know where the other person going. They even know if the other person intend to just drive in a circle, right? But they jump in the car
And they
called
go.
marriage. They
Yeah.
do jump in the car called marriage, because it's all about this fuzzy, feely relationship. Because marriage for them is just a feeling, and it's just because they was burning and they want to get that out of the way. But it's more than that, right?
That's
So
right.
Way
they
more.
they they jump in the car, and when they realize the fella just driving in circles, then they say, "Man, you take me out of my daddy house to just drive in circles." I mean, and they're upset.
Mm.
But that was a conversation they should have had
Before.
before they
Yes.
get in the car.
That's right.
Actually, let's just use this example. Let's say they were living in Adelaide, they want to move to Gambia, and they jump in the car with this guy who left Adelaide, where they want to move from. He passed Gambia and he went back to Adelaide. And they're like, so why we back here? He said, well, that was my intention all along. I wasn't planning on leaving Adelaide. I just wanted to go see some sights.
Oh
I
wow.
wanted to go, see the lights, the Christmas lights. I wanted to see it in
Well, it
Gambia.
could be.
Yeah. So, but her goal was I wanted to move to Gambia. So we're not really moving anywhere. And I mean, it's a quite simplistic example I'm using, but I'm thinking some people may get it because it's about relationships and knowing where the other person wants to go. I mean, you mightn't know with 100% certainty, but at least, having some sort of idea of where your spouse or this guy who's going to, be the father of your children and you're going to spend the rest of your life with, you want to have some idea that
That's
they
right.
have some goal. Otherwise, you know, you're going to be
Waste of
frustrated, and
time.
that leads to more broken relationships.
Yes.
So
Wow.
just had to kind of throw that in there. Um,
Have that conversation. Yes, have that conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
have the conversation.
Yeah.
It's really bottom line. I would say the failure for a lot of the relationships is really a lack of real meaningful conversations.
Conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many
Hmm.
good relationships because they are not talking prior to the engagement part of the engagement
Yeah,
because you want to find out, is this someone I want to be with? So your first
yeah,
job is then to find out whether this person meets your criteria, what you're looking for.
hmm,
Because you're not
yeah.
going to look for any, you're going to look for someone with certain
Criteria.
qualities.
Hmm.
So when you find out some of the things you want to know, then there's a next step. When you plan in the relationship for marriage, then you're going to find out some other things. You got to talk about what you want to see in a relationship, what we looking
Hmm.
for, what are we comfortable with, are we
Yes,
who can handle the money. All of these
yes,
things we should be talking
right,
about upfront,
exactly.
but we wait to take us out of our minds and we just go on that and say we're going to fix it when we get there. By the time you get there, it's too
Yeah.
late.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
true.
it's a lot.
So true.
And
Yeah.
Dr. McDonald, you brought up the biggest topic that relationships fail is, between communication and money, which of course I know we're not going to get into, but
Yeah.
that is significant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Definitely.
and
Definitely.
dealing
Well,
with,
that's a lot we can discuss.
yeah,
Like we say every week, we're not out of material. Just out of
just all
time.
the time.
All the time.
So,
Understood.
in our last minute, Mr. Martin, take 15 seconds and give your closing statement, and then Dr. Maria, you could let us out.
Okay, 15 seconds. This is going to be a feat. So for a closing statement, I'll close with what I opened with. I talked about being single, unique, whole, and talks about the marriage and relationships being 100%, not coming in with your 50-50. but you bringing 100% to the game. The other person, the expectation, which you don't have, is that they bring 100% to the game as well. And I think that will be the foundation of a successful relationship. And other closing remarks would say thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your show. And season's greetings, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to the listening audience, and to say that loved. Jesus is the reason for the season. So, Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Dr. McDonald.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. This has been such a great show, and I hope that we were able to help someone that
Mhm.
may be at the same position that you're in, losing a spouse, and now have to start all over again and making the right decision. So, just take time, know yourself, do
Mhm.
self care,
Yeah.
learn
Mhm.
what you know what you need for relationship. Don't just jump into a relationship expecting what your wife left or
Mhm.
did
Oh
to bring
boy.
it into a new relationship. You starting afresh and go with intention and you know all the good stuff, but do not compare your new person with your wife. They're two different persons. The minute
Trouble
you do that, it's over.
over.
It's
It's
yes,
like the Saxons
Next
say, over.
question.
over. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and also to our audience, it was good having you with us, Dr. Alvin. Back to you.
So, yes, thank you all for joining us this Sunday as we discuss with Mr. Martin, Vince Martin, here out of Nassau, Bahamas, life after the death of a spouse. And you can see that it is possible. And we just want to encourage you, those of you who may be, like Dr. McDonald said, who may be in that situation, that yes, you can continue moving, continue living, and do your best to get whole, because in getting whole, then you'll see where you are and know where you need to be. But until next time, you be blessed and you have a great one. um, Take care. Have a
Yeah.
great one. Blessings
Okay.
and peace.
Go on. Good
Okay,
night.
bye. It was good
Bye.
having you, Mr. Martin. It was good having you. Very good show. Very good. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.